Let's take a look back at what Kirby Smart had to say. He spoke with Mark Schlabach since we've spoken last about answering Georgia's culture problem concerns. And I think when you look at this, you got to look at the difference between some individual decisions and massive cultural problems. And the sentiment of this to me is that you do just have a handful of guys doing this. Now, it's your higher profile guys. It's your guy that could be a first overall draft pick who probably won't be now. I don't think he'll fall out of the first round, but number one overall, you want to check every positive box you possibly can. Maybe he is totally exonerated, as Jalen Carter says he will be in a social media statement. But as of now, that would kind of surprise me. But when y'all look at what Kirby Smart told Schlabach, how he answered this, how he immediately shut it down, he seems pretty confident that Georgia doesn't have widespread culture problems. And I tend to agree with that. Now, there is a lot to fix, and there is a trail to blaze, and Kirby Smart has to do it, and he has to be pretty out front about it, and there's some work to be done. But culture problems, that was kind of the buzzword from a lot of people that wanted to bash the Georgia Bulldog pinata this week, and I just didn't see that being the case.
Keep saying it, man. Those insurance premiums for those young dudes are sky high for a reason, and that reason is that these guys are young, dumb, and you can fill in the rest. They're just not. I drove like a maniac when I was that age, like an absolute crazy person. Don't start, Roos. Don't start.
You still do.
Don't start.
You almost got me killed with you one time. James Brown, man.
That wasn't my fault. He came out of nowhere and hit me. I thought it was my fault in real time because I was like, "There's no way he ran that stop sign just smoked me like that."
I bet you.
Yeah, not Rose's fault there.
I was not texting.
But anyway, what's the story here?
Some dude named James Brown ran a stop sign and just crushed me. T-boned me.
On the way to Weaver D's,
trying to go get a pork chop at Weaver D's. And this dude just, I was upset about it. And you know the great part about it? The ambulance came and took this dude off, and I had to walk to the damn hospital, get my eyes sewed up. It was the worst thing I'd ever seen.
You had to walk? Which hospital did you walk to?
I walked to
from downtown Athens to Athens Regional, just bleeding out of his face.
Yeah. We were on the backside of downtown Athens, and my man ran a stop sign and smoked me. And I had I'm bleeding from my eye, just coming, it's just dripping. And I'm over there like carrying my stuff from my car because it's totaled.
Did you get the pork chop?
I got an arm. Heck no, man.
Where did you go in all this?
I went to the hospital. I walked to the hospital with him. Where else was I supposed to go?
I don't know. You mean Weaver D's?
He was smart. That's what he would have done.
Hey,
they came and put my man on a stretcher. They came and put my man on a stretcher that hit me, and I had to walk to the hospital. Like
you know what might be worse than the fact that they made you walk to the hospital? I've never had Weaver D's.
Yeah, man. Well,
all right.
I was having this discussion with you.
It ain't what it used to be. It ain't what it used to be. It's closed 88 times since the last time I went. So,
no, listen. The culture concerns things. I think Kirby said what he needed to say. I thought it was nice to have Nolan Smith back it all up. He didn't have to do that, but that's the kind of guy Nolan is. You know, again, the NFL
recruiting
PR,
for him.
The NFL PR department's going to be falling all over themselves to get a guy like that in. The only thing that I said this on the board, and listen, I'm not calling Kirby Smart a liar. There's a very real chance that he did not know about this, but I have a really hard time believing that he didn't know about that incident report with Jalen Carter, that run in. I don't believe that. And so does that cast a little bit of a shadow on the doubt of some of the things he said for me? Maybe a little bit, but overall, I don't see it as a widespread problem. I see it as a couple of people who have issues that are in a lot of cases small. Driving fast, driving recklessly are things that a lot of people do until something bad happens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of how it is. And I think that there's people watching the show, listening to this show, people on the show like Jake Rowe, who no, I'm kidding, but that's the case for. That's the case for. It's an ever-present thing, and I don't know that it necessarily reflects on anybody, one institution, one person, one program negatively. That's just some people's prerogative, and that's a hard one to change. It's not like you have rampant drug use or you know people.
Well, and it's not like Kirby never addressed it either.
Right.
He told Schleybaugh that there was, if you're on social media, you've seen that some communities just have like reckless street racing. That's just part of what you exist in. That's what you see on a day-to-day basis is people just doing street racing. And Kirby Smart said that before the season, I think it was Bryant Gantz's recommendation that they have someone from Athens, Clark County or some sort of law enforcement figure to come in and say, hey, don't do this. This is reckless. This is dangerous. It hurts people. So when I look at that, could they have done more if they actually did know about Jalen Carter speeding and having that run in with the law that didn't amount to anything officially? Other than that, it sounds like Kirby Smart at least and his staff at least warned these guys and told them don't do it. I mean, at that point, how much can Kirby Smart be blamed for these repeated incidents? Now, if it keeps happening, then I'm all for it, man. Like you've had some pretty glaring examples of why it shouldn't happen and why it shouldn't happen from here on out.
There's no chance a cop in Athens talks to a Georgia football player and Kirby Smart does not know about that. That's just off the table in my opinion. But Roe, you said something on the board the other day that I thought was really interesting, which was the car culture perhaps around the football team, and some of the vehicles that, I mean, listen, if you go to a practice at Butts-Mehre, those are not slow cars that are parked out front.
Yeah, they really need to get a deal going with Hayward Allen Toyota. Get some Priuses
like
up in that thing.
Right.
Just get some guys some 4-cylinder Camrys, not 707 horsepower
Trailhawks.
Well, and what I was going to add is, Roos, you're absolutely right that it's unfortunate that it takes something of this magnitude to happen for people to learn from it. But you're right that it does. And it's also not just a Georgia thing. It is you'd be crazy to believe that Georgia is the only college in college football that has all these guys that have these fancy cars that are out there driving fast. You'd be crazy to believe that. And I think because of what has happened this offseason, we're hearing about it. Again, it's incredibly unfortunate that happened and that we are learning about it. But I think that what hopefully comes from it is that these guys learn a lesson from it. Kirby Smart's not behind the wheel of these cars, guys. He's not putting his foot on the accelerator.
I'll tell you this: if you don't learn that lesson now, you're not going to learn it. I mean, that's it. Yep. Period. I mean, if you were a friend of Devin Willocks and then what happened, that's it. I mean, you're just
the only thing that's going to change is your own maiming.
No
that's
question.
The only thing.
You're going to hurt yourself or somebody else, and that's it.
And here's my question to y'all: is, I mean, if you're Kirby, how do you get the point, drive the point through the skull of these guys any more than you already have doing a program like that? Do you suspend them a game? I mean,
you have to do something.
And to me, that feels like the only thing that you can do is, hey, what you're doing is making a point. What you do off the field is going to affect you on the field in the future.
And it's going to affect the team,
and it's going to affect your team. And it's going to do that at the pro level. It's going to affect your draft stock potentially. The only way to get that through to them in college is a suspension, a game suspension, a half suspension, a quarter, whatever.
I think you go multiple games for Jamon Dumas-Johnson if all of that comes through and he is guilty of said crime, reckless driving, and because that's the guy that's still under your roof. That's the guy you still got a chance to do something with. Yep. He's a team leader. Okay. He's an emotional leader for that team. Exactly. He's a second leading tackler. you make an example out of him. And you don't make an example out of him to embarrass him. You pull him in your office and you say, hey, listen, this is Jamon, you acted recklessly off the field. We're going to suspend you for 2 games, 3 games, 4 games. And honestly, I hate to bring it up in this context, but you can afford to. That schedule's garbage.
Yep.
And
if you weren't going to bring it up, I was going to say
everyone's thinking it. So
you can play Casey Martin and UAB without Jamon Dumas-Johnson.
You set an example for him. You make Jamon hurt a little bit and grind a little bit and be that much more cognizant of how his teammates are behaving off the field. Because I think that's the kind of guy that can have an impact on that. I mean, Jamon was around the whole accident too. I'm not saying he had anything to do with it. I definitely am not saying that, but he was there and he spends a lot of time around his teammates. I mean, this is a cat that doesn't go home for Thanksgiving because he's got to go to Maryland. He's around all the time. He's there. And I think that's you've kind of got a golden opportunity here to make an example and to set an example. And I think you can do that with a guy like Jamon Dumas-Johnson and have it reverberate throughout the entire team.
Well, yeah. and I want to correct Darren from the comments. He was arrested after the deaths of others, but the occurrence that he was arrested for happened before the crash. He was arrested for reckless driving.
National title, right?
He was arrested for reckless driving the day that they got back to Athens from the national title.
That's when
that Tuesday
on 10th. A different road.
It looks. I mean, it's a bad look, no doubt, either way. But I mean, the timing's important.
Right. I just want to get that straight, so that we don't have people in the comments that are confused. He was arrested after it, but the actual reckless driving occurred before the crash.
And I don't, and listen, the culture thing, I think Kirby Smart brought up a really good point, and that is that as NFL guys and others, you'll tie this thing back to the combine. These people walked into Georgia's building last year, and they decided that there are 15 guys that they wanted to play on their football team. And, because they got a chance to see the culture, they got a chance to see the guys and spend time with them. Listen, Georgia won a second straight national championship. The night after they got back, their guys were running hot, and Jamon Dumas-Johnson drove like a bat out of hell. And that happened, and he got arrested for it for some camera evidence. And then the night after they celebrated that championship, it went way too far. And I don't think any of that is on Kirby or any other individual up there at that building. I think it's just some guys who just handled success and handled celebration really poorly. And, I've handled celebrations really poorly before too. I'm probably lucky that nobody's ever lost their life. But it's at the end of the day, it was a fatal mistake that some people made. And I don't think we can forget that, there was somebody who broke protocol. They also got behind the wheel of a vehicle 2.5 times the legal limit drunk. And, good things don't happen often when that happens.
I will say too, as well, that Kirby, I don't want to say he's getting a pass on this, but you can tell things have changed a lot because listen, in the Mark Richt era, this was classic. Mark Richt has lost control of blank stuff. Yeah. I mean, these questions in my mind are fair. People saying these things, making these comparisons, I see where they're getting at. I'm not saying that I agree with it, but I understand where it's coming from because 10 years ago, this is, has lost control of the program.
Yeah. So I think we all agree that what happened is not necessarily on Kirby's shoulders, but what happens next is.
Yes.
And Ro, I think you're right, man. You set an example with playing time with someone who has committed that crime and that has done that act that you have to control right now. Whether he does that or not, that specific way, remains to be seen. But everyone's watching Kirby now. How are you going to handle this? How are you going to enforce it? Forget how do you worry about a three-peat. How do you take control of something that has clearly gone out of control on the accounts of multiple different guys? So that's what this spring is going to be about. Unfortunately, for a lot of other good storylines, a lot of other good players, that is what a lot of people are going to be talking about around this team. and it's going to be the biggest challenge. It's going to be the toughest offseason that Kirby's ever had. In an ironic twist of fate, it happens after winning a back-to-back national championship. Just absolutely insane.
And the fact that 77's not there should be, that makes it tough for everybody, and that should be all the lesson anybody needs to learn. But Kirby can't bank on that.